Croeso, welcome. This is a short introductory video for the Maritime chapter of the research framework. I'm going to introduce maritime as a theme and then show you how the research framework has really helped to improve the knowledge base and the management of the resource. So here we go then. What is maritime? Good question. Well, maritime archaeology takes as its broad definition as the study of physical evidence in human interactions with the sea. It includes all the facets that you see here: the ships, the ports, the harbours, the coastal industry, and of course the lives of the mariners themselves. Taking the concept of interactions with the sea to the times of our earliest ancestors, maritime includes methods of harvesting from the sea and from the shore. And it also includes the primitive floats and rafts that were used to traverse rivers and inlets of the large tracts of land that are now submerged around our coast. While some of maritime past can be extrapolated from coastal areas, there is still a great deal to be discovered underwater, and the sea remains a challenging frontier for humans to explore, and that is the unique attraction and the excitement for those who love maritime. Tackling this big spatial area of unknown was the top maritime priority for the first iteration of the research framework in 2004. This was addressed through provision in the Royal Commission's Royal Warrant, which specifies that the National Monuments Record of Wales should include sites on and under the seabed. I will show you a little more about the projects that took forward other aspects of those priorities listed here in the slides that follow. But just looking first at the enhancement of the record, this was moved forward at a pace with the appointment of a dedicated maritime officer in 2007. The extent of the record now matches the extent of the Welsh Marine Planning Zone, and I'm sure it will continue to be enhanced through the work of the Royal Commission's new Senior Investigator Maritime. The record comprises a large number of shipwrecks and aircraft down at sea. As you can see, I put a little list of the statistics just at the bottom of the slides, but it also includes features recorded from the West Coast Paleo Landscape project, and these are these features that demonstrate a significant potential for the survival of terrestrial deposits associated with the late Pleistocene and the early Holocene period around the coast of Wales. The project was a collaboration between Cadw, Historic England and the Royal Commission, Dafydd Archaeological Trust in particular, and the University of Birmingham. The team at Birmingham were able to access the seismic data gathered by oil and gas companies and to create 3D digital models of the stratigraphy of the seabed. Once the model was created, it was possible to cut slices through that, particular periods and dates, and through that be able to pick up the features associated with the melting of the last ice sheets and the evolution of the coastline. The project was particularly successful in Liverpool Bay, and these are some of the images you see of the digitised features, some of the glacial runoff channels, glacial water runoff channels. There was also the meanders of the River Clwyd were identified, and these were moving across the large area which would have been once tundra-like terrain. Public access to the project is still provided by Dafydd Archaeological Trust as the Lost Lands of Our Ancestors. There is a website, and there is a series, amongst the series of pages that are available, of the wonderful atmospheric illustrations that were specially commissioned for the excellent accompanying booklet. The project which probably most exemplifies the framework's aspiration for surveying and studying of shipwrecks is the Newport medieval ship. Discovered in 2002, and during the period of the first 5 years of the research framework's operation, the cleaning and recording of the timbers and the processing of the environmental samples and small finds continued. Once the cleaning had been completed, the timbers were individually recorded using a Pharaoh robotic arm and the Rhino software. The Newport ship was one of the first marine archaeological projects to pioneer the use of the Pharaoh equipment, and it remains a remarkable find, now waiting for its final home on display. Between 2004 and 2007, Cadw furthered the understanding of the history and functions of many of our smaller ports and harbours by commissioning the Welsh Archaeological Trust to undertake studies. Gwynedd Archaeological Trust also did an additional project looking into the history of the ferry crossings between the mainland and Anglesey. The Royal Commission, with its sister national bodies, purchased the extraordinary Aerofilms collection, a unique archive of aerial images, some 1.26 million negatives and more than 2,000 photographic albums. And amongst those images are some of these extraordinary views of the South Wales coal ports from the early part of the 20th century. Some of the most amazing finds in British archaeology have happened in the Severn Estuary, such as the prehistoric buildings and trackways of Goldcliff and the Bangor Pillboat. And it's individuals such as Professors John Allen, Martin Bell, Nigel Nailing, and Dr. Stephen Rippon, who are very prominent investigators, supported by the enthusiasm of people like Rick Turner in Cadw. We have sadly lost some of these key individuals, and I include Derek Upton in that, most particularly, they've passed away recently. I think it's fitting that this update of the research framework pays tribute to those individuals. In part of the success of the Severn Estuary Levels Research Committee was the number of archaeologists and paleo-environmentalists working in an area representing a large range of universities, commercial contractors, local government archaeologists and keen amateurs. A lot has been discovered in the Severn, and I'm sure there is much more to find. And it's through the project that's running at the moment, which is the Living Levels, which has created some amazing reconstructions of the life of the early times on the Gwent Levels. It's really fascinating to look at some of those reconstructions. The importance of estuaries continued to be reflected in the update of the research framework in 2011. For example, the Royal Commission concentrated on the Dovey Estuary, in particular the hulks of the last 3 sailing ferries, the early seaside resort development, and the top secret World War II rocket fuel testing site, those whose remains are hidden amongst the Innislas sand dunes. Cadw also funded the Welsh Archaeological Trust to undertake the R4D project, which involved local volunteers in recording coastal archaeology at risk. The project coincided with the succession of large storm events in December 2013 and January 2014, which led to an outpouring of archaeology in the intertidal zone and at the coast edge. One of those sites is the significant erosion of St Patrick's Chapel at White Sands in Pembrokeshire, which is still being taken forward now by the Duffield Archaeological Trust in a kind of a rescue scenario. Through R4D and through these responses to the storms, a significant number of tidal wrecks and finds were recorded by the Welsh Archaeological Trust, the Royal Commission, the Nautical Archaeology Society and Morven Archaeological Diving Unit, the National Museum and the University of Wales Trinity St David's. Cadw work on the first set of priorities also continued. Cadw funded 2 thematic studies looking specifically at the losses associated with coal and slate trade. And this is the priority was exploring the particularity of vessels designed for specific environments or industries. The work was commissioned from Wessex Archaeology and included a programme of marine geophysics. The Royal Commission targeted some of its archive research into the Welsh Archives networks to identify losses of these smaller coastal trading vessels and fishing boats, rather than the larger deep ocean traders, which most often feature in government statistical returns and also insurance records. The programme work, did indeed confirm that there are several very distinctive regional types of vessels that were worked around the Welsh coast, and they are present in the losses. But others noted types remained elusive. I think in particular of some of the much smaller fishing boats. Most of these types of vessels were once very common, but they've now largely disappeared, except those retained in museum collections or in private ownership. By way of educational initiatives, the People's Collection Wales website was used to create a resource relating to the loss of the Royal Charter and over 50 other vessels around the coast of Wales in a hurricane which blew over the 25th and 26th of October 1859. The map in the centre gives you an idea of all the reported losses. Cadw and the Royal Commission undertook a pilot project with schools on Anglesey and in Pembrokeshire using the resource. For those who don't know the story of the Royal Charter, I don't have time to tell you it now, but do look at that collection. It includes a short clip, a video clip of the actual site of the Royal Charter, and that was work that was commissioned by Cadw from Cotswold Archaeology. In 2017, Maritime Chapter of the research framework was reworked to include a more extensive bibliography and references to best practice guidance, and the structure was rejigged to around these 6 core themes. And looking at those themes with regard to coastal change and submerged landscapes, in the past 5 years, we've had some more exciting finds and research relating to Cantrell, the lost lands in Cardigan Bay. This was undertaken by Martin Bates at the University of Wales, Trinity St David. From finds from the beach included this magnificent 4-foot wide set of antlers, and the forest and peat deposits on either side of the find dated to between 6,000 and 4,000 years ago. So this is the time of our last hunter-gatherers and the earliest farmers in Britain. So Martin Bates, seen here with his antlers, was able to pursue the gathering of sub-bottom profiling data and core samples off the entrance to the Dovey Estuary to identify these former landscapes. Lost lands we're talking about connected us to Ireland at the end of the Ice Age and also into Europe. And it's the area in green on that image on the right-hand side there. These are our land bridges at the end of some 18,000 years ago. Continuing the theme of exploring hinterland linkages to the sea, the Royal Commission undertook a programme of research and digitisation in ArcGIS from the mariner's perspective. So this is looking at the land from the sea. It's working out how the sea actually worked with the land. And the objective was to use historic maps, charts, descriptions of sailing around the coast in diaries and letters, and the sailing directions written by naval officers. And this research indeed identified a network of anchorages, places where vessels could replenish water supplies, and the smaller landing places where vessels would be beached for loading and unloading. These hinterland linkages were also explored in the Royal Commission's popular Welsh slate book. The Welsh slate industry of North Wales employed thousands of people in its peaks, with the quarries linked by tramways and railways to the specialist ports such as Porthmadog, Porthdenowick and Porthpenrhyn. With the Maritime Record Enhancement complementing this study, we are able to suggest that there are some 64 documentary losses to slate-carrying vessels around the coast. But unfortunately, they do not include any of the remarkably fine and weather-leaf schooners built by David Jones or David Williams at Porthmadog, and these have been often cited as some of the finest vessels ever seen in British waters. And it's interesting, I put some detail there about the different destinations that the vessels, the losses around the Welsh coast, where they were working to and from. And they also include, I think interestingly, something to highlight, it includes the maritime heritage of 17 other nations, supports vessels from Ireland, vessels from America, vessels from France. And so this is it's an extensive portfolio for the remit of Welsh government to protect. And relating to that, we have had, in the last 5 years, significant advances in providing a framework for better management. Through the requirements of the Marine and Coastal Access Act, Welsh Government has provided a marine plan. Historic Environment has a dedicated chapter and a clear set of principles with regard to the offshore development and the mitigation of any potential impacts on heritage assets. At the bottom of the slide, you will note that the Archaeological Research Framework is specifically referenced in the Marine Plan's implementation guidance. Again, it's to inform appropriate mitigation and archaeological programmes of work resulting from development. We've also seen Cadw, in collaboration with the heritage agencies of the other UK devolved administration, publish historic environment guidance for the wave and tidal energy sectors. And last year, Cadw added to its suite of guidance notes relating to the implementation of the Historic Environment Wales Bill, managing the marine historic environment of Wales. And this guidance note sets out the criteria for defining significance of any site and the relationship between the different licensing regimes, those operated by Cadw, those operated by the Natural Resources Wales, and the licensing regime operated by the Crown Estate. The new Welsh Marine Plan highlights the continuing need for a sound evidence base to underpin decisions, hence the importance of continuing the enhancement of regional HERs and the Royal Commission's maritime dataset. In April 2019, the Welsh Government declared a national climate emergency to accelerate action to tackle climate change. To help raise awareness, the HEG, or Historic Environment Group, the subgroup on climate change, published the Historic Environment and Climate Change in Wales Sector Adaptation Plan. The Adaptation Plan includes a set of priorities for those working with landscapes, for those working with historic building, but also two for maritime, which you see at the bottom of the screen. The European-funded Cherish project, a partnership between the Royal Commission, University of Aberystwyth, Discovery Programme Ireland and Geological Survey Ireland, is one of the ways in which the aspirations of the sector plan are being fulfilled. That's by providing provision for seamless onshore-offshore data collection, enhanced paleo-environmental data sets, and the excavation of sites at risks. The U-Boat Project Wales and the Royal Commission's recent publication, Wales and the Sea, aim to address priorities 6 and 7 of the present framework. That's material culture, preservation by record, and the maritime identities. Wales and the Sea publication, 10,000 Years of Maritime History in one book, drawn the pictorial and object collections of the National Museum, the National Library, as well as the Royal Commission, and it won a commendation for the best illustrated maritime book. The U-Boat Project Wales worked with a network of community partners, which included the local museums and, of course, and the People's Collection Wales, which are used to tell the stories of forgotten heroes who took part in the Great War. And one of the sessions invited people to bring family items and memorabilia in to be digitised with the People's Collection. This axe and spyglass that you see in the middle were brought in, and these are the only items that the ship's captains were allowed to, a Welsh ship's captain was allowed to save when his sailing vessel was sunk by U-boat. The research project, the U-Boat Research Projects, the programme of that also allowed us to look at a very important aspect, which was the role of Black and minority ethnic groups in the Great War. And I think there's a general agreement that this has been somewhat not recognised and has not been well researched in the past. And our programmes of research identified about 6 the losses amongst those around the coast, which had significant numbers of Black, Lascaux, and mariners on board. For example, the Apapa, owned by the Elder and Dempster line, which worked from between Liverpool and the west coast of Africa. When that was sunk by U-boat, 77 lives were lost, and the majority of those were Black or West Africans. A youth group that was involved in the project through Ceredigion Museum were able to go out on a dive boat to lay a wreath of flowers over the site of the Apapa in remembrance. It was important to tell their stories during the commemorative period, and what you see here are a selection of small portrait photographs that were attached to the identity cards required by the British Register of Ships and Seamen. And the top images are, or the surnames Evans, they're all from Wales, and the bottom images are some of the Black mariners who were also part of the British Merchant Marine. And we were very privileged to work with the community groups in Bute Town of Cardiff to tell more of their stories and their experiences of working, of serving on ships and serving during the Great War. And so here we are in 2021, and it's time to reflect and review on what has been accomplished. I hope I've given you a bit of an insight into some of those things. And together we're going to set new research priorities. It's your chance to make your voice heard. So please do get in touch with the committee coordinating the update. We've included the website address and on the left-hand side of every slide in this presentation. And also there is a Facebook group which you can see what's going on. So please do take part, and we very much look forward to hearing your views and your thoughts in the future. Diolch yn fawr, thank you very much.